Hey, horror fans, once again, it is me, the Horror Miser Monty G. As we continue on with the 31 Days of Horror, it is time for me to continue my series of the Underworld film series. It is time to review the fourth film in the franchise. This is Underworld Awakening. Yes! Now, Underworld Awakening is a 2012 American action horror film. This was directed by Mans Marlin and Bjorn Stein. This was written by Lynn Weissman, John Hovland, and Michael Straczynski. Now, the film stars Kate Beckinsale, India Isley, and Theo James. Now, in the fourth film, when human forces discover the existence of vampires and lichen clans, a war to eradicate both species commences. The vampire warrior Celine leads a battle against humankind. Let's go! You know, back when I first found out that, or I wasn't surprised when it was announced that Screen James and Lakeshore Entertainment were making a fourth Underworld movie. The series was making money for them and Sony, and fans of the series wanted to see Kate Beckinsale return as Celine. They did enjoy what Rona Martin did in Rise of the Lycans, but they wanted to see Celine back. And she came back. Now, it was easy for Len Wiseman to come up with a story since this story was supposed to be used as the first original sequel, as the first two script was a very long script, and they broke that up into the first two films in the series. So to break it on down, it was like the first script that was written was this real long script. They realized it was too long, so that became the basis of the first movie and the second movie. This story right here would have been the actual first sequel of the film, but they decided to use this for the fourth film. So, 3 years after the release of Rise of the Lycans, Swedish directors Mars Marlin and Borgen Stein brings us the fourth film in the series, Underworld Awakening. Now, taking place a few years from the events in the second film, the government and the general public somehow becomes aware of the existence of the vampire and lichen species. There's really no explanation about how they found out, but somehow they did. Now, of course, the government used a program to study and harness the powers of both the vampires and lichens, but then after that, an all-out genocide begins. It was called the Purge by the clans, as they were basically just taking on any vampires or lichens that they found. Now, eventually, Celine and Michael are captured by the humans, and where Celine is placed on the cryogenic suspension while Michael is experimented on. 12 years later, while the purge was driven both the vampires and lichens on the brink of extinction, Celine is freed from her confinement and then encounters a young vampire named David who is looking for her. Now, while she is escaping and they're trying to find some place to get away, we're seeing Celine, she's seeing these visions, this point of view from another person, but who are these visions they're seeing? Who is this girl named Eve? And who is stalking her and David? And can Celine survive long enough so that way she can find the Michael who is now missing? That's basically what this film is about. Now, I do like the story that Len and his writing team have crafted here, as it would make sense for the general public and for the world to discover the existence of the two species. Now, I think because of Alexander Kravina, who did his best to contain the existence of the two species with his cleaners, they tried their best, but eventually, since he was killed in evolution, it was not going to contain that aspect, not going to contain their war any longer. So eventually, the world would find out who these people are. So I'm not surprised that this film just exposes the fact that these two species were in existence and people are now after them. I also like the fact on who Celine and David discovers who is following them. We actually turn out it's a little girl named Eve, and I like what her relationship to Celine is. Now, of course, if you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. We all know who Eve is and what her relationship to Celine is, but I'm trying not to really spoil anything. So for people who have not seen the Underworld film series, they can actually enjoy who Eve is and what her relationship to Celine is. Now, while I like those aspects of the film, it's the other part of the story that is a bit cliche when it's discovered who has been experimenting on Celine and Michael. It's really not no surprise about who these people are, but it's kind of cliche because While it makes sense for this type of story, it really doesn't add anything new to this franchise, which is something this needs when it comes between vampires and lichens. It's the same old thing that we've seen before, and I was hoping they actually tried to do something new. At least the fight scenes make up for the story, as we get some decent fight scene between Celine, David, and the other vampires against the Lycans, especially against Quint, the so-called super Lycan. That's what he's called in the movie, the super Lycan. But you can understand why. We still get the slick gothic like atmosphere in this film. That's always been a staple of the franchise. And we get a decent soundtrack uh, as well, with some songs from Linkin Park, The Cure, and Everseen. I thought this music was great. The soundtrack is great. The nice, slick, gothic like atmosphere. Once again, the cinematography is fantastic. Obviously, Kate Beckinsale, she's fantastic as well. I mean, this is a role best suited for her as well. It's just that, the overall story was a bit weak. Kind of like they really didn't know what to do in this particular film. Now, again, I understand that this was supposed to be a film that was supposed to be the original sequel to the franchise, but because of how they wrote the first story, how long it was, they broke that up into two films. Now, this is the fourth film. So we've already had three films in this franchise. So this kind of dulls. It's kind of a bit dull. No, I wouldn't say dull, just kind of something that we've already seen before. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the super liking aspect of the film, and I like Quint. But it's like we've seen this before, and we would want to see something a little bit new or different. Now, despite the cliche story, this was still a decent addition to the franchise as we get introduced to new characters such as Eve and David. Kate Beckinsale is once again great as Selene, and we get some decent fight scenes as well. But as I stated before, you can see that they were kind of running out of ideas. And while, like I said, I did enjoy the film, but you can see that the series is about to go on his downside, and eventually it does in Blood Wars. I'll talk more about Blood Wars when I do that review. I should have that review up on Thursday. Hopefully, nothing will stop me from doing this. But like I said, again, it's an okay film. It's not as great as the first three films in the franchise because all the first three films were decent. But it's like this. I just wish they would have tried something a little bit different along with the storyline. If I were to actually give out my 5 bloody gold coins, I'd probably give this maybe a little less three, maybe close to 2.5. Like I said, it's kind of good, but then it's kind of fair. So more likely, I would give it 2.5 out of my 5 bloody gold coins. Like I said before, it's okay. It's not better than the first three films of the franchises. It's just that for me, they kind of started to run this series into the ground a bit. Like I said, this was the start of the decline of the series for me, and eventually it really declines in Blood Wars. So there you have it. That's my video for the day, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, please give it a thumbs up, like, and share because it helped out with that YouTube algorithm. Also, if you're new here, please hit that subscriber button and ring that notification bell. That way you'll be notified anytime when I put a new video such as this one. Once again, my name is Lamont Smith, better known as the Horror Miser Money G, and always remember that horror rules. I see you in my next video. I'm out.